of the lawyer as constitutional vanguard. So from what we have here, you will see that the Endsars movement is actually a movement, and it's something that is worth remembering, commemorating like you're doing today. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, ma'am, for that wonderful session. Like, I was carried away with, I was writing quite a number of things from your presentation. Thank you so much. You spoke on the things the Endsars movement brought into you actually mentioned a lot of things that came into play when the movement came on board, and you mentioned the power of the youth activism, the engagement of the youth in political activities. You also mentioned the fact that it amplified the need for accountability and transparency. You mentioned that. You also mentioned the fact that amplified the role of the international in responding to global issues, and we are so grateful to have you take that sessions. Of course, we don't know if you will be able to join us at the question and answer session later on today, but regardless, I'm sure Prof and every other speakers will be able to do justice to the questions that will be asked that's connected to your presentation. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your journey, for joining us this morning, and we wish you safe trip to your destination and have a lovely deliberation over there too.
Thank you so very much, and please permit me to exit. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So we'll be moving straight to the presentation by the guest speaker. That is the lead speaker for today, and that will be taken by Professor Adedeji Adekunle. I don't have his profile with me, however, he's an internationally known human rights advocate, and particularly with respect to the reform of criminal justice system. I remember earlier, that was last year. Yes, that was last year. We had a regional conference. That's the media edition of the regional conference on criminal justice reform. And this was hosted by Prof. And I was glad I was part of the delegates who participated at this session. I had quite a number of things, a lot of things to take home, and I'm glad to have you here on behalf of the Human Rights Committee. And Prof, we want to hear from you, from your wealth of knowledge. I want you to share with us what you think about the movement of Endsars. Thank you so much, Prof. You have the floor.
Thank you, Toby. You are doing a fantastic job. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
My compliments to my colleagues that will also be speaking later. In order to make this easy for those who have joined us, I would like to share some slides. Okay, I'm not able to share, so let me just go on with my presentation then. I think slides have been disabled. So by way of starting, I am in complete agreement with my sister Joy on the implications, the fundamental and far-reaching implications of the Endsars campaign. The truth of the matter is that if we have the kind of synergy that youths galvanized during the during the Endsars campaign. Now I think I'm able to share. So let me see if I can do that. Just a minute. Please. So I was saying that if one looks back at the campaign, how it's built up and became quite a formidable movement, you kind of wish that this kind of synergy is replicated in many areas of our national life. Joyce has mentioned how the successes recorded in terms of mobilization incentivized a number of youths to participate in politics. But that is probably a conversation for another day. So I'm addressing squarely the issue of police brutality and legal reform. And I want to say, I mean, the write-up that accompanied the poster for this event remarked that has anything really changed in terms of police brutality? And the statistics are grim and quite dismaying. And I have narrated a number of statistics. I think the most painful and as far as lawyers are concerned would be the very wicked way in which life was snuffed out of Mrs. Amabolanle Rahim. And it's cold comfort to us that even the murderer of this legal petition has been convicted, tried and convicted, but our life will never be revived. Somewhere far away in Delta State, a former official of the MD was brutalized by the local DSS office whilst he was trying to perform his duties. The list is legion, and it goes on and on. And, I think the truth of the matter is that there is still a long way to go in terms of powering legal reforms and behavioral reforms in the police and indeed other sectors of the security apparatus. Now, you will find that there are two levels of reaction or response by the police. And most of the uniformed forces when things like this happen. And it's pretty much the same how professional bodies respond. The response, that is to keep it within us, keep it within the fold of the professional. So a soldier runs amok and causes all kinds of mayhem in society, in the public. And the army will say, no, we have to take this out as a court martial or it's an ordinary room trial. And the same with the police, no matter how heinous the crime. And I think that has got to stop, because the truth of the matter is that whether you are police, whether you are soldier, whether you are DSS, you exist in society, and you've got to behave like every member of society. You can go on with your administrative proceedings, but where you stop, the civil laws, the ordinary laws of the land must come into place. And that is why we applaud and we commend what the process that took place in regard to Mr. Vani, the police officer that was responsible for the killing of the lawyer in Lagos. Yes, we recognize also that yes, these disciplines have their own professional codes and their own ways of dealing with misconduct. But we are saying that beyond dismissal, because that's really the most they can do, dismiss. And so you dismiss, but as far as we are concerned, the laws of the land, the ordinary laws of the land, which the rule of law says has to be upheld, has not really been complied with. Let me say that the issue with the police and probably with other uniformed personnel is first that of orientation, and second that of personnel mistakes. There are a lot of mistakes in this organization. Some haven't come in under very quotes questionable circumstances. Recently, we heard about how some so-called confessed street gang members found their way into the police, the special force units of the police in Kano. But special force or not, once they done that uniform, nobody looks closely to say, oh, it's SFU, oh, it's a normal police officer. As far as we are concerned, it's a police officer. And they come under the supervision of the Nigeria police. So when you now, without adequate profiling, absorb questionable character into such organized force, then you can only invite trouble for the rank and file. And that, I think, is the problem that the police has to grapple with. That's in terms of institutional reform. Those that are responsible for recruitment, those that are responsible for discipline, those that are responsible for training and orientation, they have to come to grasp with these factors. And I will touch on some of these things as time goes on. Some of them, as we will see, has been delayed, as a result of some ambiguity in the law. But thankfully, that has now been addressed by the Supreme Court recently this year, and we'll talk on that again later. So for me, I don't accept that administrative proceedings should be the end, especially where an offense is involved, especially where life is involved. I think that it's important that not only should police, yes, if you want to suspend, suspend. Yes, if you want to derope, derope. But you must surrender the culprit to the civil authorities so that the ordinary laws of the land will be allowed to operate. Now, one of the most telling consequences of the Endsars campaign is the constitution of on human rights violations by SARS and other units of the Nigerian police. And this was replicated, in many states of the Federation, including Lagos and other theaters where these demonstrations took place. Recall that in 2019, I think, in 2019, the Human Rights Commission had actually conducted an investigative panel on sites, even before this Endsars. And one of the recommendations then that this panel made included not only identifying a number of culprits that you have been trained aware of, but
Please, Prof, can you hear me, sir?
yes.
Yes, sir. We will need you to amplify a bit. The volume at your hand is very low.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, let me do something about that. Okay, I'm sorry about that. So I was saying that
Thank you, sir.
One of the takeaways, fundamental takeaways for me about the Endsars movement is this very important investigation into the activities of an arm or units of the Nigeria police. And this time around, when the Human Rights Commission was done with the hearing, it recommended sanctions against 73 police officers. 28 should go for prosecution, 25 for after dismissal, and 15 for disciplinary action, including the 4 that was recommended for demotion. But we would really not be doing justice to that panel if we just look at the sanctions recommended, because there were also major recommendations. Some of the recommendations include the need for reorientation and overhaul of behavioral patterns of the police. What this means in fact is that from day one, when you bring them into the force, in the training school, you need to overhaul the curriculum. Curriculum has to change in order to let them know that there is a higher authority than that baton or that rifle that they wield, and that is the law. There's a higher authority than the beret or the tunic that they wear, and that is the rule of law. Unless every aspect of that syllabus is reoriented towards the supremacy of the rule of law, we will continue to have issues. Of course, I had mentioned the issue of profiling. We need to know exactly the kind of people we bring to handle weapons. And they need to undergo periodic checks. Make no mistake about it, running after criminals or villains is not the same thing as a hunter running after bush rats. There are grave dangers, we know that. And the police officers, many of them, they operate under harrowing conditions. We know that. And we know that over time, this can in fact impact negatively on mental stability and health. And therefore, one of the things that the police needs to do routinely is to subject officers, particularly those on the field, to these routine checks in order to know whether this person is sufficiently stable to continue to wield the gun. So much for orientation and behavioral pattern. The panel also suggested systemic vetting before and after recruitment. The vetting of bad cops can be optimized through periodic reviews or hearings. And here, the panel suggested that probably every 3 years or every 4 years, that this kind of hearings of complaints and this kind of inquisition or inquiry into police operations should be conducted. It can only make the police stronger. Some other people have suggested the intensification of CCTV cameras in almost every corner of cities and the country, so that these days, even some of the responses that the police have been able to do in regard to some of the cases I cited came from social media. So that's to tell you the power of visual equipment and tools. So if you had a wired environment, thank God, in a place like Abuja now, we have a number of CCTV cameras and traffic lights that manage traffic lights. And sometimes some of these atrocities are committed there. You find policemen mounting roadblocks and extorting users of the road. And extortion escalates to violence and all kinds of other things. So when you have these kinds of things, it's important you'll be able to gather enough evidence in order to deal with this cases. Let me talk about law reform. The police organization, they have not been idle. And I think we should recognize, I'm not saying we should start clapping, but we should recognize and try as much as possible to encourage first the former Inspector General of Police and the current one, who indeed have declared that they have zero tolerance for indiscipline. But they are like fighting against a tidal storm. They need helpers even within the organization. One of the things with leaders is that if you don't have enough of hands to oversee some of these things, then your impact will be minimal. So for someone like the IG, the current acting IG, I think it's important that he puts round pegs in round holes. And I'm saying some of this happening. I'm saying even before the IG response on issues, I'm saying commissioners of police in various states visit victims and making statements concerning what the police will do in response. So one of the things they have done is to revise Force Order 237 on the use of force, including lethal force. And the point here is simply to say that force is lawful only if it is reasonable, necessary, and proportionate. If there is no gun in sight, if no life is being threatened, there is absolutely no need to fire a rifle. Under no circumstances will warning shots be fired in the air. There's nothing like that. This is the first order saying that it is absolutely unlawful to do that. And these are things that I think many police officers on the field will really know. In terms of legislative reform, we have the new Police Act 2020, which introduced community policing and safeguards that govern police powers of arrest and detention. Now, the truth of the matter is that some of these things they are taken from the application of criminal justice laws, but it's also good to emphasize them. I am intrigued with the police complaints response units, which for me is a good feedback mechanism for the police and a good outlet for people to voice out complaints. So we need to take hold of this in civil society. We need to ensure that this mechanism is working, because this is something that has now been tucked squarely into the statutory framework of the police. And the job of the PCRU is simply to investigate and report on misconduct, crime and serious cases causing death. There is some ambiguity with regard to where it turns its reports. And the law says oversight bodies. And I'm sure that the IG will want to limit that to himself or the Police Service Commission or the Police Council. But I dare say that if you have an Attorney General that knows his or her onions, the Attorney General is also an oversight body as far as security and rule of law is concerned. And I think that it's really the strength of the Attorney General, because the Attorney General is the custodian of public interest as far as the rule of law is concerned. And therefore, it should be able to demand that, okay, thank you, you've done your administrative hearing or your guard room or orderly room trial. It's now for the courts to take over. That is, and also for the AG to request for the report of the investigation so that the DPP can take hold of the prosecutions and bring an effective case to court. So I'm rounding up now. The one that for me is really earth-shaking, and I'm sure you know that one of the things that the panel on human rights violation in 2019 had highlighted is the weakness of the Police Service Commission, the liturgy. In fact, that commission hitherto was boxed and more or less handicapped. You found that recruitment in years past was just handled by the police, by the IGP, without recourse to the Police Service Commission, despite what the 1999 Constitution said. And so in 2020, I think, if it was not earlier, I think it was, yes, 2020, when a public notice came out from a committee set up by the IGP that they wanted to recruit constables. The PSC said, no, you'll be usurping our constitutional function. And the IG said, sorry, look at the Nigeria Police Act, the old one, and even the new one, that says the responsibility for recruitment of constables is that of the Inspector General of Police. And then the PSC says, sorry, Mr. IG, look at the Constitution, which says that we have the power to appoint persons to office other than the office of the IGP. I think normally at that point, the IG should just have said, no, sorry. But old habits die hard, and this thing went to court. And happily, the Supreme Court has clarified the position and said that this is the duty of the Police Service Commission. That does two things for me. It does two things for me. First, it brings a layer, a layer of oversight and control in the kind of person recruited into the force. Second, it strengthens the position of the Police Service Commission in discipline. So, there's this thing about, are you the one paying my salary? Are you the one who employed me? How do you now want to be cautioning me? That is something that we've had over there. But now that people know from day one, as you are coming in, the terms of your engagement are clear to you. And you know that you have the PSC to answer to if you misbehave. I think this is very commendable. And I believe that, yes, we should get over personality. So yes, in a way, you might say that, yeah, thank God that the new chairman of the PSC is very active. Thank God that we have a cooperative acting Inspector General of Police. But I believe that beyond these two personalities, the provisions of the law will definitely guide reform and changes, the desired changes in this area. Let me say that I may have sounded optimistic. I am not really convinced that change will come just like that. It's going to be a long time coming, but I believe that the foundations have been laid. Some of you you probably have noticed that the PSC has invited, has set up a recruitment committee and invited applications. I'm also quite aware that this is not just going to be a normal exercise where people of all kinds of colors and shades of opinion will be recruited. So I can only wish that this process again, I can only hope that it goes the way that the PSC desires and the way the generality of our people desire. I think it's time that we really insist on an accountable police force. And in fact, not just the police, all security agencies must be subject to civil authority. I want to thank the NBA Yaki Bench for inviting me, and I wish you the best in your assignment to shed more light to these kinds of things. Thank you very much. You are muted, Ruth. You are muted.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bro, for that insightful session. It was quite educating. You started from the recommendation of the recommendation given by the panel after the panel, and you went further to talk about the case development and of course you commended the progress so far with respect to the MP here. And I actually, while the session was going on, I actually desired that the Nigerian Police Force representative were part of this conversation. That would have gone a long way to actually add some spices to what we have on ground. But really, Prof, you did a very good job. Thank you so much, sir, for that session. I believe a lot of persons have some comments and some questions for you. And we hope that you stay true to this session so that you can handle them. Please, for participants, you can drop your questions, your comments in the chat box. It's open for everyone to interact. So we'll be picking those questions and comments for our panelists. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
So going forward, we'll be having another amazing person. That's in person of the Mr. Kola Alakwini is actually one of the speakers joining us outside the country. Is not in the country, so you can imagine the lot of sacrifice they have put into this to be part of this session today, and we really commend your commitment to this event. And we are pleased to have you. I read through his profile on LinkedIn and I was wowed by quite a number of things you've done in this, like when it comes to advocating for women's rights, both locally and internationally. So Sal, you have the floor and we are ready to learn from you. What are the lessons and the take-homes for us from the Endsars movement? Sal, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ojumo. Thank you everyone for joining, co-panelists. Thank you for your efforts. First and foremost, I want to say that we missed an opportunity for police reforms after the Endsars movement. Instead of police reforms, what we had was a relabeling of the police. Say the department which was primarily responsible for that, when I say insurrection or uprising by the people. Because what we had was the Inspector General of Police just changing the name of that unit instead of a total reform. And Prof had touched on some parts of it, which I will delve to in a couple of minutes. First and foremost, we cannot understand the Nigerian police force and the mentality which they have if you don't go into the history of the police force itself. So when we hear Nigeria Police Force was not actually a force for Nigerians. It was a force by the colonial powers to do their bidding. It started as a constabulary force, West African force, or Hausa constabulary, etc. They evolved over the time. They were set up to crush the natives or anyone who stood on the path of the colonial government. It wasn't a place set up for our country or for our country people. When you come from that background, from that history, you would know why the Nigerian police force transmuted into the brute force which it has become. And what happened to the lawyer who was shot on Christmas Day in Lagos is not new. If we have some of our participants here who were old enough in early 80s, 81 or 82, or thereabouts, there was a certain gentleman called Dele Udo who used to be a sprinter, based in the United States. He was going to school in the US, and he came to Nigeria to represent, his country. He was shot at the roundabout near the National Stadium in Lagos. He was pulled over by the police and started speaking to them in American English. And the next thing, the policeman had opened fire on him, and that was the end of Dele Udo. So you can see this pattern reoccurring time and time again. There was a certain gentleman who was father to one of my friends in university. He was a colonel in the Nigerian army. He was shot just at the roundabout in Bonny Camp. A full colonel in Mufti was shot by police officers at the roundabout at night at one of the checkpoints. So you can see, if such things happen to highly placed individuals in the society, what hope lies for the common man? Having identified that we missed an opportunity to reform the police, where do we go from here? You now need to look at the events of 20th of October and what the great efforts that the state put into place to deny that it even occurred. There was a systematic approach by the state to cover up, and we were yet to properly address it. If I may refresh your memory, recall that the CCTV, which could have given us forensic evidence, was disabled at the Lekki toll gate. That was a first step towards the cover-up, so that there will be no evidence, no digital recordings, no real-time forensics to back up investigation. Then they switched off the lights so that they could perpetuate whatever they wanted to perpetuate in darkness. And therefore, we have now found ourselves with a narrative, who came, who shot, who were they, which units were they from, etc., until we had help from, some forensic experts internationally who were able to trace the movement of the military convoy from a certain military unit, unassailable evidence, showing us the movement of the troops. This was where they came from. This was what they did. And then a few recordings from people on their phones, which the authorities now denied. Oh, they're doctored. It didn't occur. No live rounds were used, even when we have evidence of shells and cartridges on the floor. So the state itself has not even made any deliberate effort to want to address what happened. Instead, what we've had is a cover-up. And recently, you see what happened in Lagos State, where about 107 bodies wanted to be, quietly buried or disposed or got rid of, whatever language you want to use. And opposition arose that you cannot just do this without proper identification, etc. And the government did the runner again. They ran away. So the government is still playing the ostrich, burying its head in the sand, but exposing its rump to the whole world. And we've made ourselves a laughing stock around the world. We've refused to deal with the issues properly. And until our government comes clean, it's going to be difficult now because we have an incumbent president whose son is tainted in what happened at the toll gate. The advertising company whose billboards were switched off and the lights were put off and the CCTV were removed belongs to the son of the president. I don't see how that evidence, how that is going to be dealt with, because, we now have a situation where persons in power have vested interest in what occurred. Prof had talked about the curriculum and everything. I wouldn't want to take your time too much, but let me just, I restricted myself to 4 recommendations to allow people to be able to chip in and discuss. First, we have an overhauling of the curriculum of the police academy and the police colleges in the country to do. We are still teaching these men and our officers, the intending officers, with the mindset of the colonial government. A few years ago, Channels TV had an expose of the living conditions of the recruits at the police college in Ikeja. It was appalling. Mattresses on the floor or on blocks. The beds were broken. The kind of food which we're giving them, it was as if there was a deliberate attempt to dehumanize the recruits. So what's going to be the product of such people who have gone through a systematic dehumanization of their psyche before being handed rifles and churned onto the street? I used to live in school. I used to live in school in the UK, and I can tell you that a few times I'd seen policemen with guns would be maybe at the airport. They are called anti-terror policemen, or some international train stations like Waterloo, King's Cross, etc., where you station these anti-terror policemen. It's not every policeman in the United Kingdom that can carry weapons. They undergo special training from time to time, psychological evaluation, to ensure that such people who bear weapons are actually, they have the right frame of mind to do so. And that's one of the reasons why shootings are at a minimal in the UK. And of course, you know that the system is very different to the United States, where you have a constitutional right to bear weapons. So it's different in the UK. The citizenry is not expected, they don't have constitutional rights to bear weapons. And you have minimal amount of policemen who carry weapons. So you have less shootings, etc. It is not the carrying of weapons that makes a policeman to be feared. The British police has only a baton on him, but because of the high level of discipline and expectation, I'm not saying they're not corrupt. I'm not saying that they don't have their own issues as well, but the integrity level is much higher. That if you know that you're compromised and you're not doing the right thing, if a policeman pulls you up, you're already shaking if you've done the wrong thing. Or if he comes to knock at your door, they call it an early morning call, and they come at 5 a.m. in the morning. If you know that your papers are not in order, and you can see people flying out of the window, out of the backyard and everything, because you know you're not in good standing, they don't have to carry weapons. You don't have to carry weapons to enforce discipline or to do your job. So there has to be an overhauling of the curriculum of the police academy and the police colleges that we have in the country. And we need to train them to be more service-oriented, to serve our citizens instead of the vestiges of the colonial powers which we have. Because what we've simply done is to replace the colonial powers with a few of our people in government. So essentially, the people in government, just think of them as the former colonial powers, and the police is just there to serve them. And you can see we have more of our policemen, even in VIP protection, than protecting the citizenry. A policeman who has been trained with your taxes would be carrying the handbag of a governor's wife, or will be there carrying the briefcase for a National Assembly member. It's appalling. There are greater things to do in the society and on the street. And then the ones which we eventually put on the streets end up shooting the citizenry on Christmas Day. A heavily pregnant woman, for that matter. So we can see that lots of things are wrong, which need to be fixed. Then the rule of law and swift dispensation of justice, for instance, we have to look at it. There is no reason why policemen get involved in matters which are civilian in nature. You know, it's a clogging up of the police stations. Our police institutions now become an opportunity for recovery, because that's what the police just do at their stations these days. You have a problem between two citizens, someone goes there to make a report, the police find a way of criminalizing it so that they can wade into it. And, oh, how much is the money to be recovered? It's 5 million. Police have turned to collecting 10%. And they will collect from both sides. You know, that is the danger when you put the police force. Well, we just ended up in murky waters. We need to clean our audience tables. The fourth one is an increased synergy between the federal police structure and the states. And I'll give you an example. The Inspector General of Police gives a directive and says, policemen are not allowed, you know, when I use policemen, I mean the general, these are the people who wear their ranks on their arms. There's a difference between a policeman and a police officer. The officer is the one who wears his rank on the shoulders, on the pips. So when I say policemen, I mean mostly the other ranks. So the Inspector General of Police gives an order or a directive and says, do not check people's phones. This is an invasion of privacy. You have no right to do so. And you still have the policemen at the checkpoints. The first thing they do is they profile you, maybe with dreadlocks, or you've got tattoos. My grandmother had tattoos. It's not a new thing. This is a sociological evolution. The only difference we have these days is the way the tattoos have been modernized. You know, in Yoruba culture, tattoos, we call it soji. They are, you know, a cultural adornment by a woman, and it cuts across all cultures too. They have it in the northern culture. So I don't know when bearing tattoos, which my grandmother, who was born in the late 1800s or maybe the early 1900s, had when she was a young lady, has now become an offense. So the police profile you, they see tattoos on your body, they see that you're donning dreadlocks, and then they pull you over, assuming that you're a Yahoo boy. I'm not saying that Yahoo boys don't, you know, fit that profile. And then they start searching your phones, which is a clear affront on the Inspector General of Police directives. So there's a dysfunctional attitude there. Is it that the policemen do not know that the Inspector General of Police has given such directives, or is it that it's a conscious disobedience of orders? And if so, what is the penalty? How many policemen have been arrested? Is the ex-squad of the police even living to his functions etc., etc. So in conclusion, we missed a big opportunity to reform the police with the Endsars. What we did was we just relabeled the unit. The police are still at our checkpoints. There's still arbitrary arrests. We still have accidental discharges, and nothing has changed completely. Even the department, which the SARS, whatever, is still very active. The one in Abuja is there, where they call the abattoir. I mean, that also gives you a narrative there when the police department that is supposed to be special anti-robbery squad is being called an abattoir. There's no abattoir there. It's very close to Guzape. There's no abattoir. There's nowhere where animals are slaughtered. But the police department is known as abattoir. So if you want to take the bike or a taxi or whatever, you just, the bus stop is called abattoir. End of story. I don't need to say anything anymore. Thank you very much, the panelists and our people. And I wish us all a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kola Alafele. Thank you so much. Like, you got me laughing at the end of your presentation. But the truth is, those things have some psychological effects on the officers too. And of course, it played out in what they do when dispensing their duties as officers of the law. Thank you so much for your contribution on this conversation. We are trying to meet up with the time we have scheduled for these sessions. So we would want everyone who has questions from Mr. Kola Alafele to please drop it at the comment section. I've received 1 or 2 questions from participants already. So we'll be moving straight to the next conversation, and that will be taken by Mrs. Abiye George. The first time I met Mrs. Abiye George was during the conference, the just completed MBA conference in August, and it was a great time meeting her. I saw a woman of passion who's passionate about promoting rule of law and human rights. She has done quite a number of things in this respect, and she's here to share with us from our wealth of knowledge. And I'm so sure that we all will be leaving here more informed on this subject. So I'll be reading her profile briefly, and I want you all to I think she doesn't want me to go ahead with that, but I'll still go ahead with that regardless, because they need to understand what you've done in this regard and how important you are in this conversation. Thank you so much, ma'am. So you'll be having the floor after the brief reading. Thank you. Abiye George, a human rights defender with special focus on women and children. In 2012, she published a handbook on children's rights, an accredited regional attorney mediator with the compliance advisor, ombudsman from the International Financial Corporation and the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency of the World Bank Group. She is a certified mediator with the Lagos State Multi-Door Courthouse, a member distinguished panel of Nutrias LMDC. Abiye has a PhD in peace studies and conflict resolution. She is an ASON mediator, advocate, and a motivational speaker. Her love for education has made her pioneer different seminars and workshops on educational advancements. Abiye is the dictionary-in-chief of ATG Legal, a cosmopolitan law firm with consulting legal practitioners, mediators, and arbitrators. Our claimed community legal literacy project titled Live Better Every Day offers free legal advice and counseling on various legal issues in communities and partners in different locations. It is also a digital program created to make sound, incontestable, accessible, and delightful legal advice and opinions to individuals, institutions, and government. She is the Vice President, Association of Environmental Lawyers of Nigeria, the Vice Chair, Nigerian Bar Association, Lagos Chair Lady, Human Rights Committee, NBA Lagos, former Chair Lady, Welfare Committee, NBA Lagos Branch, Chair Lady, Child Rights Committee, African Bar Association, former Public Relations Officer, African Women Lawyers Association, Lagos, former Chair Lady, Project Committee, International Federation of Women Lawyers, Lagos, former Secretary, Premier Bar Cooperative, MBA Lagos, former Treasurer, Central School Board Management Committee, Etiosa, Lagos Government Area, Local Government Area, Lagos State, former Vice Chair Lady, School Board Management Committee, Langbasa Primary School, Etiosa Local Government Area, Lagos State, and lots more. She is a member of the Board of Trustees, Lawyers in Oil and Gas Network Association of Environmental Lawyers of Nigeria, and City of Peace Initiative Lagos, non-executive director, Xylus Company Group International. Abiye established a mobile comprehensive library as part of a mass literacy and enlightenment campaign with specific focus on improving the reading and writing skills of children. She initiated a popular reading program for children in schools titled Read a Book a Day. She is passionate about how children live, grow, and the opportunities offered to them. She constantly engages with children and teenagers to expose them to knowledge. Her hobbies are counseling and writing. Her ardent desire is to establish a comprehensive family and child development center. She will readily donate to any cause that protects and promotes the well-being of children and peaceful families. So I want everyone to please pay rapt attention to this awesome speaker as she takes the next session. Thank you, Ma. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. And I want to say a very good morning to everyone here, particularly to our panelists. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cracked voice. Forgive me if my voice is coming out a bit strange. Thank you so much for everyone that is on this call. I want to quickly correct that I am Vice Chair Emeritus, and I can see Esther Ijumo, the current Vice Chair of MBA Lagos Branch. Yes, we quickly go into my own presentation. I want to be as practical as possible, and then perhaps to offer the solutions that I have penciled down. We all agree that there is lack of scalability, which is there is no change after the Endsars. One of the lessons that we have all repeated here, and we all know, is that the brutality cannot be described. Nothing has changed. In fact, just about 2 weeks ago, a lawyer was treated worse than an armed robber, because an armed robber also do have a right. He's got a right for his own life. He's got a right to be heard. He is presumed innocent until proven guilty. But a lawyer was brutalized to an extent that you can only just want to imagine it. So that's the extent to which we're talking about the eminence of non-change government security forces on citizens. It is beyond what anyone can describe. Just yesterday, I was actually in Ajiwe police station in Lagos, the Aja Access. A client of mine has been invited on 3 different days to the police station for a matter on child custody that is already in the court. Now, even when I called the DPO to say that this matter about the custody of these children is in court, and on the 27th, we'll be going back to the court. I'm talking about the DPO, but that wasn't adhered to. My client was still then invited, and she was moved from one unit to the other. So there was a petition in the FS unit, which is the family unit of that police station. And then the next day, there was another petition, the same facts, on the human rights desk. And she was invited by the human rights desk to answer questions and then write another statement. So we're just trying to talk about the fact that these things are there. And we all agree that they are there. The next thing is the institutional impunity. We all agree there is impunity, but this time around, it is institutionalized. The last speaker, Mr. Kola, had just informed us of how impossible it is going to be for you to even investigate, because the institutional apparatus, the bodies responsible to investigate and come up with facts that is prosecutable, are dead. If the president's son has the key to unravel what happened on that fateful day, what are we talking about? So the impunity has gotten to a stage where it is almost impracticable to discover what is happening. So how can we get justice? How can things change? These are questions that must be at the back of our mind while we continue to look out for solutions to address these problems. The next for me is the total absence of rule of law, respect for human rights, upholding the dignity of the human person. We all agree that this is prominent, this is there, and there is no way to paint it in any way. We can all see it is very glaring. We all agree that there is a total lack of accountability, transparency. There is nothing in our practices, in our conduct, in our protocols that gives us the confidence that we can sustain them, right? And so that is another thing that we need to have at the back of our mind while we're trying to come up with solutions. Now, the other thing that also stands very, very, very prominent as well is criminalizing protest. Today, it's dawned on all of us that if you mention that you want to protest in any form, you might have very severe repercussions. And so it's not surprising that nobody wants to come out and perform this very important civic responsibility that entrenches freedom of speech, promotes the democracy that we're mouth singing to have. Every area that should promote, sustain, and advance the rule of law, democracy, and respect for human rights are already dead on arrival. We simply cannot do them because the institutions of government have been able to strangle, they have been able to intimidate, they have been able to kill, maim, ostracize. They've done so much to the souls of Nigerians that everybody has become in that self-preservation mood. Nobody wants to come out because even when you do so, you may not achieve anything. And so we must understand that that is where we are at the moment, right? Now, for lack of enforcement of our laws and implementation, I mean, it's clear to us that although we have certain laws crying for reforms, but if they are implemented, if we're sincere enough to implement even the laws that we have, we know that certain human rights abuses would have been reduced or handled in a better way. But because we cannot even implement the basics, Order 22, First Order 22, it's something that would have, filled up the gap of the excesses of policing in our communities, right? Where a lawyer stationed in any of the police formation will have the first insight as to whether a matter is a civil matter or is a criminal matter, in order to advise either for or against any detention of any citizen. Now, there has not been any compliance of that First Order 20. Even magistrates, there is a law that magistrates should routinely visit the police formations and on the spot, even discharge detainees that do not have any business in those police formations. But that also has had its own challenges because certain police formations, including the DPOs, will not allow the magistrates to conduct their activities in a free and just atmosphere. And so it's important for us to understand the extent of abuse that is going on, so that if we're proffering solutions, we know what will work and what will not work. There is a total lack of trust in our judiciary. Our judicial system, it's indescribable when you want to talk about justice. It's very unfortunate. But even the very little things, a child is under threat. A child's life is at risk. A man's life is at risk. A woman's life is at risk. And you step into the family court. You want an emergency protection order for the child, for the man, or for the woman. And you cannot have that order granted until after 1 year. Now tell me, what sort of trust, what sort of confidence will you have? Can you rely on such a system that cannot save a human being that is about to be killed, that is about to be maimed, that is about to be thrown out of the comfort of our home or his home? Now, that's the extent to which we are talking about the state forces in collusion with what happened about the Endsars. What happened during the Endsars is, for me, a lot of factors came together for that to happen. You remember that all our courts in Lagos State, most of our courts were burnt down. And that is a clear indication of what society had assumed the courts to represent. For them, the courts do not represent anything. And that's why they could take up such a violent action on an institution that would have been the very last hope of their struggle and their fears. So it's important that we underscore these things very well. And lastly, I want to rest on this in trying to understand the lessons to deduct from the Endsars protest. It's the abduction of responsibility by stakeholders. For me, this lesson is very clear. I am one of those that should be blamed. And I think every one of us on this call should share a blame of abducting that solemn call, that responsibility to safeguard, to promote, and to advocate. I remember that in some of my interventions while I was the chair of the Human Rights Committee of my branch, and I went to some of the local communities to speak to the ballets of certain communities. I was honored with their attendance and their listening ears. They were ready to collaborate. They were ready to learn. They were ready to form pathways for sustainability. Now, what have we done as lawyers, as NBA, as CBS, as NGOs? What have we done to help even our community members to better organize themselves? Now, when I spoke to the audience, the ballers, and I told them that we can come up with a protocol of engagement of community members, they were all very excited. And these protocols can outline the ways and manner that people could behave in a certain community, the punishment or penalties that will result as a result of not adhering to those protocols. Now, can you imagine that in all of our local governments, we have such protocols that we can refer to. We have such protocols that can guide us. Now, if a man slaps a woman, if a woman slaps a man, these are the consequences. Can you imagine that the NBA, the Human Rights Institute of the Nigerian Bar Association, do have a framework that elaborates on how human rights activities should be conducted and comes up with protocols that will be shared across every police formation in the country on the engagement schemes and mechanisms between citizens and the police. We're not even talking about lawyers anymore, because lawyers have been tagged even worse than an ordinary citizen. Sometimes it amazes me when certain persons talk about the fact that some lawyers are unruly, they haven't behaved properly, and that's why some officers, had targeted them or had done one thing or the other. And my question is, do you want to right a wrong? Do a police officer, any circumstance, has the right to slap, to coerce, to intimidate, to maltreat any human being? Now, if the answer is no, it shows that there is a lack of professionalism. There is a lack of proper training on the part of that police officer. And so in order not to take our time, I'd like to go to the solutions to all of these things that I've just enumerated. The first things that we must do is to have a very sober reflection on what we should do. Each and every one of us, particularly as lawyers, we must begin to form cycles of brainstorming activities. And that will be to reflect what has happened, to reflect on all the things that a lot of us are aware of today, so that we'll begin to do a SWOT analysis. It's important to reflect. And then you do a SWOT analysis of the entire system. Do we have any strength at all in terms of our practices, in terms of our protocols, in terms of our laws, whatever we are doing? Are there strengths that we can find? What are the weaknesses of all of the things that we do? And I want to beg us that we should not only rest our findings, our evaluations on the police force. We need to look at every aspect of governance, because that is the only way that we can achieve a sustainable progress. Are there opportunities? Do we have opportunities at all? And what are the threats? So if we do a proper SWOT analysis of the things that we'll face, the challenges that we'll face, I believe that we'll begin to form the pathway of finding a solution to a problem. It is important, secondly, it's important for us to evaluate and assess the root causes of police brutality. Now, it's very smooth and good for us to come here to say that nothing has changed. It is very easy for us to say that, yes, we need reforms. Yes, we need to be able to hold people accountable. Yes, there are no transparency activities within the system. Now, that's not all. When we conduct a root cause analysis, we'll be able to narrow down on one or two very specifics that have generated the entire problems that we have. And until we're able to target at the very root of what police brutality is all about, it will be very difficult for us to find a proper solution to address it. Mr. Kola had mentioned something about the continuation of the system that was in existence. I do not belong to the school of thought of blame games, because I believe that the thing that is very common and is very accessible is to push blames, right? And so for me, the root cause, it's something that we must take time to analyze. We must take time and uproot. We must take time and bring out in their hundreds the root causes and then narrow down on specific two in order that we'll be able to address these Ecolian challenges headlong. Thirdly, we must entrench professionalism. And by professionalism, I mean your objective, your target is to get your job done. Any other distraction, any other interruption, it's not something that you should recognize or act on. And so if I walk into a police station, I am aggrieved, I feel very bad, and I decided to act out in a way that is aggressive. A police officer that is specially trained ought not to be provoked. That's what professionalism is. As a lawyer, and I have two clients that walk into my office, and the first thing they started doing was to quarrel and then exchange very abhorring words among themselves. My duty as a professional is not to intimidate, it's not to curse or to do anything, but to ensure that I'm able to control that session with respect and to put my focus on delivering my job as a lawyer. And so we must begin to teach and entrench professionalism in all of the tractors, in all of the institutions of government, particularly the police. There is something fundamentally wrong, because yesterday when I saw the DPO and I told him that, look, this matter is in court. It's about child custody. The police do have better, very challenging criminal matters to attend to. Why are you supporting the fact that my client has been invited to your station for 3 consecutive days and she works in a private institution? The consequences of what the police is doing to this young woman it's better imagined. And for him, I mean, his response was that we're mediating. And so we must be able to form clear lines as to what the police should do. A lot of police stations now tell you they can mediate. Are they supposed to be mediators? We need to set those ground rules. We need to understand what professionalism is and ensure that it's been entrenched. Now, most importantly, in all of the things that we're talking about today, we need to move with the times. A lot of the problems that we have, a lot of the challenges that we face today can be resolved by just automating our processes, backed up by AI tools. A lot of the challenges that we're talking about today, whether in police formations, whether in our courtrooms, immediately we have that strength of character to demand and force government institutions to automate their processes and their systems. We would have resolved 90% of our challenges. And I think that that is what we should go home today with. We must begin to advocate and fight for our processes and our systems to be automated. And if we do that, I assure you, we will have addressed human rights abuses significantly. The other two things I quickly would like to mention is that we must have an uncompromised penalties regime for defaulters. A lot of the times, I mean, when you go to the prisons, you see that things are not done in the way that they ought to have been carried out. We hear all manner of stories where people that have been convicted are no longer in the prison system, but they have been exchanged by innocent people. So all sort of things happen. We must have an uncompromising attitude to ensure that criminals are being held accountable. And lastly, we must learn to evaluate and monitor all of these systems. That is the only way that we can sustain whatever that we do. Thank you so much. And I want to thank very much the organizers of this program, because I mean, it's almost certain that the Endsars protests and the lessons were almost forgotten. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Mrs. Abiye Tamjudge. We had quite a number of things to that we were able to take from your presentation. You spoke about the fact that the compromising characters of our officers need to be looked into, and a lot of things need to be done with that respect. And you also talked about the fact that we need to embrace professionalism. Thank you so much. And I believe there are questions for you already from the participants, and we will be taking them right away. So please, ma, just stay a while with us and we'll get right into that. Thank you all for staying through till now. I'm sure you've had a lot, you've gotten a lot from this, our amazing speakers, from Prof to Mr. Kola, to Madam Joyce, and to Madam Abiye. All of them did amazing jobs in dissecting this topic. So we'll be going straight to taking our questions and comments, because we are trying to meet up with our time. So we'll quickly run through. I'll be reading out some questions that are specifically addressed, addressed to the speakers. From Benjamin Skepe, said, thank you so much, sir, for that insightful teaching. That's Prof. My question is in respect of the appointment of constabulary. I read a brief release from the Nigerian Police Service Commission yesterday, which according to the release is that the constabulary in Kano State are not police officers, though recognized by law, but are not recognized by the government and commission. So my question is, having regards to the provision of section 40, subsection 4D, vis-a-vis the judgment of the Supreme Court
Is the PSC correct to say that constabulary and not police officers are not recognized by government? That question goes to Prof. I want to believe Prof got the question.
Yes, can I go right away into it, please?
Yes, Prof, you can.
Okay, so I think that release, you want to check it again. What I saw, I think, was special constabulary. So the special constabulary is really a strange creation. From what I've been able to gather in existing law, that is the current Police Act, there is also the supernumerary or something, supernumerary police, which is a special police force that is paid for by a private sector organization. But the special constabulary draws funds from the public force, and it's established, or it's resorted to in times of emergency, and also in accordance with needs determined by the Inspector General of Police. What I think the PSC person meant is that their terms of service are not like the ordinary police officers. So they are appointed to serve a fixed term of years, usually 1 year, which is renewable. But you know the problem. Now let me go into the problem. The problem is like, this is almost like contract staff in banks. You know, year in, year out, the contract is renewed. So year in, year out, these people, not parts of the force discipline, did not go to training school, don police uniforms, carry batons, and can actually warm their way to carrying weapons, especially if they have been recruited in times of trouble. To all extents and purposes, see themselves as the police. And the more they stay in the system, knowing that one day they'll be yanked off, the more desperate they become to use that apparatus in order to exact rents. So that is the problem. And it's made worse by the fact that the act is very ambiguous about the authority that can sanction them. So you probably will have, because it refers to a competent authority which is not defined in the act. And competent authority in this sense, if I put on my legislative drafting lenses, will probably then be the appointing authority, which is now back to the IG or the Commissioner of Police in areas of trouble. So that's the problem. The Kano instance, they said it was the Commissioner of Police who did the appointments, because Kano was at that time embroiled in crisis. And so he resorted to those powers to do it, but I don't think there was sufficient oversight in what he did. And I think that that's area of police powers, or police administrative powers, needs to be revisited. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, I think you've been able to do justice to the question, Prof. Thank you so much. So this question goes, the second question goes to Mr. Kola. I can see Mr. Adedeji raising his hand. You'll be given opportunity, if the time permits, actually, to ask your question or make your comment. So the second question goes to Mr. Mr. Kola. The question was asked by Stanley Ibe. He said, "Hi, Kola. Many thanks for your insights. Excellent recommendation. Is there any chance that you can drill down a little more on those recommendations? You asked for an overhauling of the curriculum. What would you like to see there? How might that translate to more rights respecting officers? I know that human rights are not infused in the training of the average police personnel. When on reservice orientation, how do we make the police institution more service-oriented? What tools might you suggest to make this possible? And lastly, from Stanley on this, he said, on increased synergy between the police institution and states, how might this happen? By what indicators might we measure increased synergy? Mr. Kola, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, okay, thank you. First and foremost, we need a basic introduction of fundamental human rights into the training of the policemen. And that's the other ranks who go to police colleges and to the cadet ASPs who go to the police academy. We don't have to be very elaborate because we're not training them to be lawyers. We're training them to be law enforcement agents. So what you need to do is, chapter 4 is sufficient. Chapter 4 of the Constitution, you break it down to them detail by detail. What's the right to dignity? Section 34. What's the right to peaceful protest entails? The rights of the citizenry, the rights of the protesters. Once you can do just chapter 4 as a beginner's course or a holistic course, which would span, say, 2 semesters, a whole year, introduction to chapter 4 of the Constitution or introduction to fundamental human rights, that will suffice. Police officers should be trained to defend the Constitution and the citizens, or defend the country and not the government. There's a distinction, not the politicians. And we saw this happen in the United States at the Capitol, where a former president of the United States tried to instigate the citizenry. The police as an institution, that's the Capitol Police, stood their ground, even to the loss of lives. I think 1 or 2 officers lost their life there. They stood their ground and they refused to allow a president who had been defeated at the polls to hijack the government. And that's because they understood that they are there to defend the Constitution of the United States. I think there's a basic difference in the way we train our policemen over here. Our policemen will more listen to politicians here or protect the politicians instead of the country or the citizen itself. Then the question on service orientation, retraining for service orientation, that was what I was talking about. And I noted here that it instantly means that the policeman will not entertain a civil matter. Once you've trained them properly and you let them know, for instance, Abia was talking about a matter which was already in court, and the police is still trying to delve into it. That's impunity. Once the matter is in court, all parties should hands off. And we see this even happening at the EFCC, which is primarily littered with policemen. A matter is reported to the EFCC. It's already in the court. Maybe civilian disputes has to do with finances. Somebody now goes to the EFCC again to go and make a report, try to criminalize it. And the police, the EFCC knows already that this matter is already in court, and they delve into it. And there's no punishment. Nobody is cited for contempt of court. Nobody is, so we keep on condoning this thing. But the basic thing is that there has to be a basic orientation. I don't know how the NBA is going to enforce this or make sure that there's greater instillment of this in the training of the police officers. It should be, what the Muslims call haram. Once a matter is already instituted in the police, in the court system, and somebody brings it to the police should say, hey, this is untouchable, go and deal with it. We cannot bring it there because it clogs up the police, the policing system. Time which should be spent on valuable investigation, the police now embroil themselves, and it has to do with finances, whether we like it or not. The police are interested in the financial remunerations that comes with it. What's the business of policeman with mediation? Policing is different from mediation. You have a job, your jobs are clearly cut out. The police station is not a mediation center. And you can see that there's a loss of focus completely. So we need to go back to the basics, let them know these are the kind of matters that you can deal with. These are the kind of matters that you cannot deal with. And there should be sanctions attached to it. I don't know what the police have in place internally to measure this. There should be some sort of measurement system in place. How many criminal matters have you resolved? Who are the people who delved into civilian disputes? Did you turn it away? Etc., etc. But because the police itself is overwhelmed and there is systemic corruption, they will just be dancing around in circles. It's linked to their pay package and service conditions. If the policemen are not, we get the kind of police which we want. Every country does. If the policemen are not properly paid, and we are attracting the wrong kind of people into the police force, then we end up where we are. Because if a man is properly paid, he enjoys his job. You look at the uniforms that some of our policemen turn up. I would make a light-hearted observation here. Most girls, if you want to ask them out, they look at your dress and they look at your shoes. You can tell who a perfect gentleman is from the kind of shoes he wears. If you're going to judge by the kind of shoes our policemen turn up, you can see that they've already failed ab initio. And I understand that quite a number of them even buy their uniforms themselves, buy their shoes, and everything. So what have we turned ourselves into? And they can see the huge waste going on by our politicians, the convoys. In recent times, we have, even though we have a very different National Assembly, in the conglomeration of the people, we have Labour Party now, which is a third credible force. And for the first time since 1999, the color and the face of the National Assembly exchange is more varied. And you will expect that with the new politicians who are coming in, there will be a change in the way we do things. So even the ones who have come into want the new SUVs, nobody's now saying anything anymore. One SUV costs 160 million naira. So even the Labour Party that a lot of people thought, oh, they will bring in a new idea. Everybody, they've kept quiet. They're going to receive these vehicles. And then you want the policemen, and the common man to just continue and to take the heat. So you can see we have systemic failures. And so, and the policemen live in the environment. Look at their barracks, and you expect them to change. So we need to go back even to the welfare of the policemen themselves. How do we manage or increase synergy? I think that was one of the questions. Well, complaints procedure should be rapid and open. Say, for instance, the use of new technologies is cheaper. I know the first PRO now engages people on Twitter, and a couple of issues have been solved on that. So there has to be, and even the Endsars protest itself was instituted or started on Twitter because someone was able to get the picture of the policeman who was harassing the citizen and uploaded it on Twitter, and that's how it all spread like wildfire. So the use of new technologies must be capitalized upon, Twitter, Facebook, etc. The police itself has an internal system of dealing with issues, and that is the X squad. But a lot of people don't even know that the police have an X squad. The X squad is the internal police, the police within the police force that checks. It's like the LPDC. that takes the antics of bad policemen. But they're not very approachable. They're not very visible. We don't know much about them. They need to be more out there, more accessible to the ordinary citizens. Someone was saying whether there was hope in the system or whether we can get a change. Yes, there is hope. The important thing is that there should be no secret cows. If a policeman is found guilty, we must show them the way out quickly. There was a video recently of a policeman who was being dealt with by the provost, and it was, they removed his cap, his shoes, his belt, and he was crying. We need to see more of that visibly, so that a strong message can be sent to the bad eggs within the police force. Also, I know that the NBA has a committee in place to interface with the Nigerian police. Well, they also need to be more visible, more approachable. I don't know if there's any way we can measure their success or target their success. Is it a weekly forum? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? More of their dealings with the police need to be more visible. There has to be a measurable indicator in place to see how we're resolving this. The case of the lawyer, the lady who was murdered on Christmas Day, is a high-profile case, and that's why we've been able to see the sustainability of it was in the spotlight. Even though it was a high-profile case, it still took almost a year or thereabouts for a conviction to be done. There are thousands of such cases that are not public, and they just die away quietly. I hope I've been able to take a few of these questions. Let me yield the floor for my co-participants to be able to respond to their own questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would want to ask the third question from Lawrence Ojo Gabriel. He said, as a Nigerian flag advocate, it was really quite embarrassing, sad, and offensive when I saw that with the flag of Nigeria was desecrated, especially with the fact that a citizen of Nigeria was killed with the flag hanging around him by a fellow citizen of Nigeria. What can we do better? Or is there no with regards to safeguarding the citizens it covers? I think I should give that question to Prof. Please, Prof, kindly answer the question. Thank you.
So, I think this speaks to everyone actually. When a civilian attacks the police, you see the reaction that they attacked an officer in uniform. They attacked an officer in uniform, and heavens must fall. But it means there's a disconnect, as far as I can see, between what that uniform represents and the color of the textile. But what that uniform represents is even probably a component of what the Nigerian flag represents. But this is where we are. I think we shouldn't be fixated with the flag or the values. And that's why I said this is something for all of us. I mean, if the colors, it's the current flag that we have is backed up. It's as valuable as our compliance and our social ethics and civics, our will and the ability to obey the rule of law. And if that is missing, sorry, even citizens will use the flag to do just about anything. And the truth is that the current state of the Nigerian polity has a very low respect for the state and authority. For many people, even that flag, sadly, is a symbol of oppression and repression. So this is something, again, that we really need to see. I go to some places, even in this country, and I see people implant the national flag in front of their houses. I see at one time, a lot of people fly the Nigerian flag, you know, just the symbol on their dashboard or at very conspicuous place in the back seats. I don't know how this has disappeared, but for me, it's a barometer to measure how citizens view their relationship with the state. So it's really a work in progress. It's a work we must all do. At one time, we wouldn't start a program like this without the national anthem. Yes, at one time in this history, programs like this, even before we start, we play the national anthem. So in our consciousness, we need to ask, why did that disappear? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the response. Thank you very much. We have quite a number of questions and comments here. I just hope we'll be able to respond to every of the questions we have. So the next questions goes to the that's Madam Abiye. So thanks for your presentation, Abiye. Can I pick up on your reference to Force Order 20? You suggest that there has not been any compliance. I suspect there has been some compliance, but I wonder how committed the NBA is to fostering the police duty solicitor scheme. Do you see a future for the scheme within the NBA? What might that future look like? What obstacles must be overcome on the path to that future? Man, you can respond to that.
All right, thank you. And that's a very important question to have raised. The police duty solicitor scheme. It's one of the interventions that really would have reformed the policing system that we have, because it's always important that you have a third force that can evaluate, assess, and give feedback. And I think that's what the police duty solicitor scheme would have achieved. The NBA would need to key into this scheme wholeheartedly. I think that it hasn't done that yet. I know that Bayo Akinlade, who almost single-handedly ensured that this, come to stay, has done quite a lot. But as we all know, you can't continue to ask lawyers to give and give without receiving anything in return. I mean, I've been at the forefront of this scheme. I've been to several police stations volunteering my time to do it, but I can't do that all my life, right? And so we must all of us must knock on the door of the NBA to say, you know what, you need to key into this project. It's going to be beneficial to us as lawyers. It's going to be beneficial to our communities. It's going to strengthen promoting the rule of law. It's going to strengthen and advancing the respect for human rights, okay? And so if we can impress this on the NBA through the Human Rights Institute, I'm very sure that the Human Rights Institute, in trying to work with the body of present and past vice chairs, are coming up with programs in order to cement some of these schemes. But the truth is, we must take a step further. We're not doing much. And I believe that if this is taken up, it's really going to help reduce a lot of the issues we face at the police stations. Now, take for instance, the ESCO for Chester Lawyers Forum decided to visit the Chief Magistrate, right, a courtesy visit. And as part of our deliberations, we talked about the issue about cultism. You see a lot of young men, in prison, correctional facilities. And when you interview them, 90% of them will tell you they are there on framed up charges of cultism, right? And then she was open and fair enough to tell us that a certain police officer came into a court with over 20 young men. And when she asked about the files of those young men, there was no file. What is their offense? Their offenses cannot easily be itemized. And then she asked them to leave her corpse. And at that point I asked, those young men had visited our court. They were lucky to have been brought into a place where justice would have prevailed, where they would have been sent home freed from their abductors and framers, but they were asked to go back with them again, right? So if we had in existence the police duty solicitor scheme, that would have helped stop that particular incident of taking almost 20 young men into the court system. So I think that it's something every one of us will do. Every one of us should advocate. I mean, there are certain things that we should just go on our social media handle and insist and ask. NBA, what are you doing with PDSS? We want it active now. Such little steps, I believe, will go a very long way. Thank you.
Thank you much for your response. I also belong to the Duty Solicitors Network in Abuja here, and really, you've raised one of the concerns of some of the lawyers volunteering with this network. I think it's high time we began to take the conversation forward in making DSN part and parcel of MBA. And I believe with that platform, we can do a lot with respect to reforming the police, this police service. Thank you very much for that. So I want to just read out some comment before we take other question. This comment is coming from Sheyi Arewo Shegbe. Said, as much as the job of the police is well cut out in the Police Act and other relevant laws, what do we do? Well, it's actually a question. What do we do to encourage citizens from reporting civil matters at the police stations? How do we ensure that the police station is not turned to a mediation center? What should the police do when civil matters are reported at their stations? I know Prof started a conversation on that, responded to that, and I want him to take it up from there just to amplify his voice to help the participants who might not be able to access the chat room. Thank you. Prof, please, sir.
I'd actually responded generally, but that's one take on the very interesting issue that Mr. Arewo Shegbe raised. We pay a lot of attention on office holders and very little attention to citizens. And I'm saying this with good reason, because not because of their faults, it's also how desperate society has made them, or how desperate the government has made them. So sometime last year, I put it to a group of judges. Do you still think you are respected in society? And they were gravely disturbed. But how could I? That who else is respected? That they get appointed to chair committees, blah, 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 and so on. And I said, well, time will tell. But I don't think really that as we are now, where we are in the current in society, I think lawyers and judges are really quite they're very low in the estimation of a lot of people. That is my own opinion. And therefore, people run away from the courts. People don't trust the courts, and they look for quick fixes. But like everything in the public sector, the buck has to stop somewhere. And so despite what Citizen A or Citizen Jack or Citizen Musa thinks, the police got to be the one to firmly shut the door to this. And if at the desk level, at the DPO level, or at the police desk, the police station desk level, where the sergeant is unable to do that, then the CP has to have a chat with the DPOs and say, if I find any instance of a matter that is really civil law in your purview, then just know that we are in for it. And while I'm saying this, let me quickly say that between the Human Rights Institute, the Office of the AG in the various states and the federal, the Police Act empowers them to take hold of all these things. You know that the Commissioner of Police is bound every quarter to report on activities that relates to legal aid, and that also relates to issues of arrest and detention to the Attorney General. And also issues that relate to human rights. Now, if an HRI, if at the state level, an NBA at the state level takes hold of this, meets the Attorney General and requests for a partnership or even to see some of these reports. So these things, you have to take hold of it. And if the police is handicapped, as you know, when we are talking of reports some years ago, the police says, we don't even have stationery for statements. We are talking of reports. Then we push it back to the states and say, provide them with these resources. That is what we have to do. We have to take some of these things and by advocacy and by affirmative action, and ensure that government that pays this people also adequately resources them in order to discharge their task. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I still want you to answer some of the questions that actually, if they are connected to this, the last question, I would have just joined them, but I didn't see them on time. So one of the questions I have with me says, what can the NBA branches do to empower their Human Rights Committee, particularly the office of the Vice Chairman, who are statutorily saddled with these responsibilities? Then Sadiya Salem said, please, how do we approach this issue of police brutality in our various states as new chairpersons of the Human Rights Committee? I think those questions are together. Then I just want to pick Mr. Folarinwa Aluko, the former branch chair of NBA Gariki branch. He said the scheme works. That's the police duty solicitor scheme. He said it works. Our branch initiated the scheme and we had more than 100 100 volunteers in stations across the FCT. Branches should take ownership, and I must commend Mr. Lawrence Ojo, Vice Chairman of Gariki Branch, who was a duty solicitor and has continued to champion this scheme to date. So, Prof, please, can you just make some recommendation on what MBA branches, particularly the vice chairpersons, what can they do to
well, you just read out what Olarin said, and I can't say it better. Branches take ownership of that scheme. The ACJA, the Police Act incorporating the ACJA, and this particular provision that I said, that obliges them to team up with legal aid services, to team up with pro bono services, to ensure respect for human rights, and to ensure that the way they deal with detainees are cataloged. You know, every police station has to do that report to the CP, and the CP forwards to the state attorney general. Hey, the attorney general, for God's sake, is a bad person. So how cannot the NBA in the states approach the attorney general, regardless of issues of he's a politician or he has a higher master? At the Security Council level, nobody deals with these forces except the attorney general. He's the one that they send to go and interact with them and see ways by which they can assist their work. So for me, I'm saying that the attorney general is best situated to intervene on behalf of the legal scheme for this. And in fact, I dare say that amongst the bar, there are also previous attorneys general, there are past attorneys general, there are people that already have relationships with the police. You know, when you come to brass tacks, you can't even aggregate divisions in the police. You can't say that they're working the same way. Those who have been in this PBSS scheme will tell you that some divisions actually go further than even what the ACJA says, you know, in terms of cooperating with the visitation team. On the other hand, in some states, it's actually the magistrates that are saying they don't want the NBA to accompany them or lawyers to accompany them. So, you know, these are things that you just really need. If the law says something, then the law is the law. It has to be followed. And if it can be enhanced by joined up services, by the NBA, by volunteer officials, by the legal aid, so be it. But I think I agree 100% with Mr. Folarinwa that the bar just needs to own up and take hold of this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for that response. And I can see Mr. Folarin comment. So Mr. Stanley Ibe is the grandpa of First Order 20, and I think it would be great to have him share some of his thoughts on how to activate Human Rights Committee. It would be nice to hear your voice, Mr. Stanley Ibe. I hope the time permits us to hear you. We must hear you talk. Yes, sir. Would you like to take a few comments, make a few comments on the conversation we're having? Okay, while we're trying to get him, there is a question from Plan Jack Jonathan. Jonathan, I'm very sorry for murdering your name. He said, my commendations to the guest speakers for the job well done. I have two questions as follows. Said, can we say that the Endsars was a failure or a success or succeed in part? Two, he said, can the history of our Nigerian police force be redefined to reflect our present day expectations in civil security enforcement, peace and stability. 3, he said, as the change of SARS to its present day sister unit achieve the demands of Endsars. I think that those are the questions. I think those are the questions from Jonathan. And I want Mr. Kola to respond to that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not sure if I got the questions very well. Let me just pick it up here. Is it a question on Endsars?
Yes, sir, from Jonathan.
Okay, I can't seem to pick the question.
Okay.
Please, could you repeat it?
Okay, let me just highlight it.
Yes,
and
please.
get back to it.
Yeah, I think I've seen it. Can we say the Endsars was a failure or success, or succeeds in part? Can the history of our Nigerian police force be redefined to reflect our present day expectations? As the change of SARS to its present day sister unit achieve the demands of Endsars? So let's take it from the reverse. And the short question, the answer is no. The change of SARS to whatever name they call it now is just a relabeling. You know, it's still the same unit. What we've just done is to change the name. It hasn't changed the psychology of the psyche of the men in uniform, in particular in that unit. We haven't seen any change at all. If we did, it will have trickled down into the society. Can the history of Nigerian police force be redefined to reflect our present day expectations? Yes, of course. There's always room for change, and you know, this goes to not just the history, but the current realities on ground. So it reemphasizes what we're talking about, a reorientation of the police force itself. The police force should be made to know that they are no longer a colonial force. They serve the people of Nigeria, we the citizens. So that there has to be a total overhauling of their curriculum. We also have to enhance their pay package and welfare system. There's no way we can expect a change in the Nigerian police force as it is presently constituted, with the kind of service conditions, with the pay package which they're on, with the way it's constituted, and we expect a different police force. It's a lie. We're not acknowledging the fact. So maybe the money is not trickling down. Maybe there's corruption involved. These are things for the government itself to investigate. But with the realities on ground, even we, the citizens, okay, let me give you an example. The pump price of petrol shot off the roof. I was out of the country for about 7 months. When I was living in January, the full tank of my car, I was discussing with Fulani when we're having dinner, our committee meeting, and we're just comparing notes. The full tank cost about 13,000 plus. And then I was away the period where the Naira was being changed, when the subsidy was removed. It was a rude shock the first time when I was buying petrol, and I was filling my tank with almost 60,000 Naira. A rude shock. Maybe if I was in the country, I would have conditioned myself gradually to live up, to the new expectations. That shows you where we are. We're now out of pocket. So if ordinary people, you can tell on the reduced number of cars on the road in Abuja, and the increase in people who now do kabu-kabu from the satellite towns like Maraba and Nyanya. You see civil servants stopping to pick more people because they can't afford it. How much more the policeman? who we have put the security of our lives and property into his hands. So we need to go back to the drawing board and make sure we have the kind of police that we deserve. Otherwise, yeah, we're not going anywhere. Can we say the Endsars was a failure or success or succeeds in part? Well, maybe succeeds in part would be a more realistic conclusion. What we've been able to show is that the Nigerian youths can galvanize. We could show that we could use technology properly. We also exposed the Achilles heel in the security forces because it showed that let me give you an example of a comparative analysis of what happened with Endsars. In 1989, the Chinese government cracked down on what we can call an Endsars protest in Tiananmen Square in 1989. So what they did was to move in the military tanks and crush a student uprising. It was a vicious crackdown by the state, the Communist Party, on students. But times have changed from 1989. So visibly, what could capture what happened in 1989 were analog cameras and maybe a few TV crew who, the Chinese government dispatched away from scene. If we now look at what happened in 2020, there was no internet in 1989. There was the technology then is very different, but you can see the response of the government of Nigeria to what happened to the crackdown. They were still trying to solve a problem in a digital world with an analog solution. And that exposed them that they were not up to scratch. They didn't know how to deal with, a rapidly evolving situation. They were caught napping, etc., etc. So, and then it became a global movement, even so much that, Twitter, the Twitter founder then, Jack Dorsey, joined in, they popularized the Endsars, hashtag Endsars. The protesters were able to raise contribution with Bitcoins. Even when the government was trying to clamp down on accounts, there were alternative. Fintech was used to raise money. So there are various strata to it, where you could say, yes, part success. The question, the more relevant thing is, how do we build on these issues? Unfortunately, the government doesn't want to talk about it. It's a systemic, but unfortunately for the government cannot wish it away. And that is why we're discussing about it today. Because if the government could silence everybody and gag us, we wouldn't be discussing it. We don't want to acknowledge it. Even the various panels that were set up, did they succeed? Well, it's questionable. And the jury is out, on the issue of award of compensation, who were punished, who did what, has anybody been punished, etc. So it was a hogwash, so to speak. Now, and there's still a systematic denial by the government. So we've not been able to really ventilate and talk about it because the government is trying to cover up, destroy evidence, refuse to talk about it, where the elephant is in the room, So that's why I said maybe we could say the Endsars succeeded in part by exposing these various flaws. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In response to your comment on that, Mr. Polarin says, very correct, Uncle Kola. We had also had a conversation about the use of security agency uniforms in social media. So there are a lot of comments here. I'll just try to read them before we take the closing. That's the closing remark. And that will be taken by Mr. Lawrence Ojo Gabriel. I'll just read a few comments that so that before we leave the call, also from Mr. Polari, said brilliant intervention and conversation. Thank you, Prof. Mr. Alakmini and other speakers. Thank you for the session. From Stanley Ibe, he said, thank you, Mr. Aliko. Many branches are already implementing PDSS, like Gariki. Do more in terms of communicating outputs and outcomes. Any chance that we can have annual reports on the scheme at the branch level? Could the branches persuade the National ESCO to adopt the scheme so that more poor people can benefit from it? That's from Mr. Stanley. I think we've been able to cover all the comments from the chat box. So we'll go straight to the closing, and that will be taken from the closing remark from it will be taken by Mr. Lawrence Ojo Gabriel. Mr. Lawrence Ojo Gabriel is the chairperson of the Human Rights Committee of the NBA Gariki branch, and is also the vice chairperson of the branch. So please, let's make welcome Mr. Lawrence Ojo Gabriel to give the vote of thanks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much, Ruth Ojumo Esquire. Thank you very much. I was just thinking all the titles that she has attributed to me will make me walk into the police station and come out easily. I don't think those things really work in Nigeria. I must really appreciate you for a job well done, Barrister Ruth Ojumo. Thank you very much. You know, gentlemen and ladies, looking back since Tuesday, the 20th day of October 2020, one would really say a lot has really happened. A lot of people have died as a result of making Nigeria great. A lot of people are in the hospital. A lot of mistakes have been made. And a lot of lessons have been learned. The truth is, if we don't turn these lessons into positivity or turn these lessons into positive energy, we will still have SARS, even though you have removed the old clothes, you have only given them the new uniform to operate well. And I kind of like what Mr. Kolalaki said. When you want to go towards Giuseppe, you don't need to even call the place, just say abattoir. And the taxi men, they know where you want to stop. I really like that vibe. Well, the panelists have done exceedingly well in such a short time, and I must appreciate every one of them one by one. First of all, I must appreciate our beloved Professor Adedeji Adekunle, SAN. Thank you for honoring our invitation in a very, very short time. And also our discussion with regards to the police conversation, which we said we'll put into action. We'll still discuss more on that. And I want to believe that every one of us will be involved by the time it comes up. I also want to appreciate Big Brother Barrister Kola Lakini for your thoughts with regards to making Nigeria better, making the law enforcement agencies better. And I can see that you still have the passion to make Nigeria better, even though as I speak, it's supposed to be about 4 a.m. or so where you are. It meant we have taken about how many hours of your sleep you're supposed to sleep. I really appreciate you, sir. I appreciate you very, very much, sir. And I must appreciate my immediate Ogatu, Madam Abiet and George Esquire, and Madam Joyce Odua. I really appreciate all of you for your wealth of experience with regards to this challenge we have in Nigeria. I I just pray that someday Nigeria will be a place. I've been a victim of police brutality, not once, not twice. I even had one recently with the moderator at the recent crack squad, as they call themselves. If not for God, well, the story would have been a different thing altogether. And that's why I think NBA needs to do more. NBA really needs to do more in this fight. We'll get there someday. So I also appreciate my branch chairman, that is his support. We wouldn't have gotten this far. He gave us all the necessary support and made this a reality. The branch executives of the NBA Gariki branch, Liberty Bar, I appreciate you all. Members of the Human Rights Committee, you have had sleepless nights just to make sure this comes to reality because of the passion and the times we are in. I appreciate you. Members of the body of past and present vice chairs who are present and all well wishers, I really appreciate you. Well, like I will always say, this conversation will not end here. It will continue until when we see the Nigeria of our dreams. Until when we see that Nigeria gets better, not necessarily for our children, but for us, because we won't die. We will all be alive. It's good, but when we japa, we should be able to know that we still have family members who are on ground. And it's going to be a sad pain that somebody hears, because I look back each time and I see the December 25th, was it last year now? The lady lawyer that was killed on a Christmas day that everybody should naturally be celebrating. A family was turned upside down and turned into mourning just from one bullet. It's really sad. I think we should get to a world where there is a level of peace, or where you know that when you go to the police station, like one of the questions I think Barrister Arowo Shebe asked, that when civilians keep taking their cases brought to them, you understand. But I know someday, if conversations like this continue, someday things will get better. So on this note, I want to appreciate everyone, both the attendees, the panelists, everyone for attending to this. Please let us not keep quiet. Let us keep talking. Let's keep talking. One day it will get better. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you so much, sir, for that wonderful closing remark. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and our esteemed speakers, thank you all for joining us today for this insightful session on the Endsars movement in Nigeria. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and the lessons from the Endsars movement. And special thanks to our resourceful speakers who did justice to that, to the questions and to the topic. And in the words of our former vice chairman, he said, great program, fantastic takes by the panelists. We couldn't have gotten better resource persons to handle this conversation. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you for your dedication to making this event successful. And in the spirit of solidarity and unity, we recognize that our collective efforts are crucial to bringing about meaningful change. So let's all go out and make Nigeria a better place for all of us. And next time, when I will have the opportunity to moderate the session, I want to say a very big thank you and goodbye to everyone. See you in the future. Thank you so much for joining. Bye. Bye, sir.
Mm-hmm.